We'll start right now with our end. Because we need to do it either way.
Regular session of the Anamosa City Council will come to order. Roll call.
Rich,
Here.
Bill,
Here.
John,
Here.
Rod,
Here.
Cody,
Here.
Betty. Here.
Motion to approve the minutes from the following meetings. July 24th, 2017 regular council meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Got a first by Rich, a second by Cody. Any discussion? All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. 3, public hearings, none. 4 is presentations. And I'd just like to make this comment because we have so many people here tonight that don't normally attend. If you're going to address the council, please approach the podium, state your name and your address, and please use proper decorum and respect of the people that you have about you. Dave Kleiss, regarding a recent dog bite and attack.
Dave Kleiss, 502 Rosemary Lane. I do have one comment about the July 24th meeting. In the public notice, it said that that bite happened on July 9th. That was July 10th of 2017. Okay? I know you're not the mayor. Can I just call you Bill or what?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Permission to approach?
Yes.
You look at those and then pass around to the council members. I appreciate it.
Is this your arm?
That's my arm.
Go ahead, Dave.
That was my arm, picture of it, taken July 10th of 2013. I'm gonna take a little trip back in time. On July 9th, 2013, I was bitten by a dog that was on a leash in front of the new laundromat on East Main Street. Does everybody understand where I'm talking about? I went to the hospital. The police officer came out to investigate after he was summoned by the Jones Regional Medical Center staff. And I was told that he would take the dog out to the vet clinic. Bill, what's your understanding of what should happen to that dog after it had bitten me with the ordinances that are in force?
After our discussion the last time, 3 weeks ago, would have been my understanding that the dog should have been removed from the city because of the bite incident.
That's what I feel now also. I guess I was a little naive back then, but let me tell you, it did not happen. That dog never left the community like the police officer told me it was going to be. He was less than truthful. As a matter of fact, about 7 o'clock the next morning, on a Wednesday morning, I started my walk, and I walked by the residence where this dog is or was residing. It was chained up outside on the east side of the house, and I thought to myself, that's weird. I don't even think the vet's office is even open yet. It's been less than 24 hours, and this dog is outside the residence. I guess I was naive, and I thought maybe that officer knew something that I didn't, or maybe something else happened. But the dog never left town for at least 2 weeks. The owner took it upon his own volition to find a residence for that dog out on Frozen Hill Road in Lynn County, which is like north of Stickles Farm, in case somebody doesn't know where Frozen Hill Road is. His rationale was that he has grandchildren living next to him, and with that dog having bit me on a Tuesday the day before, he couldn't justify keeping that dog in town, but it did stay in town for at least 2 weeks before it was found a home out in the country. That's issue number one. Does anybody care to know who the officer was? No?
Go ahead and tell us.
I won't give you his name right away, but I'll describe him. Shorter, stocky, round-faced. Does that fit the bill to anybody?
That doesn't fit. I'm not picturing the officer. Could you please?
Well, the name on his name tag was Mackey.
Okay. And not to interrupt, Dave, but for
Please do.
clarification,
Sure.
the bite that you were just referencing
4 years ago,
occurred in 2013.
that's correct. That dog was not removed, as the police officer said he was going to do. I apologize for the spectators. I wish you had been here for the July 24th meeting, because this is all building up to current events. At your May 22nd meeting, Nancy Schaefer was giving a presentation about a dog off leash running into her dog down on Main Street. There was another nice lady that Nancy relinquished some time to at the podium. Her name was Ellen Reddies. I believe she lives at 404 North Lynn. And she came to tell a story. And I know the story was supposed to center around dogs off leash. However, I don't think she got her due time. I don't think she was totally prepared to present much. But I've had a conversation with Mrs. Reddies in the last couple weeks. Do you recall the lady that stood up here, said she was walking her dog, except it wasn't her dog, it was a dog she was watching, I think it was for her daughter. She was approaching 1014 Macokota Street. Does everybody have a general idea where 1014 Macokota Street is?
Is this the lady that left the dog above her head?
That's right, I'm getting there. But you're ahead of me, that's good. As she approached the residence, she noticed 3 dogs in the yard, but as she got closer, she noticed that none of them were on any type of restraint device. They were not chained up in their yard. In fact, one of them came out into the street, and for a lack of a better word, she was assaulted by this dog. The dog apparently, in her opinion, was after the little dog that she was walking. So she raises up the dog above her head. She's hollering, as she described, at the loudest voice she's ever yelled in her life, "Help! Stop! Help!" Does everybody get the picture? This dog is barking viciously at her, did not bite her, but she was basically being held hostage by this dog. What could she do? Not a darn thing except what she was doing. She was totally helpless. She couldn't even put one arm down to get a cell phone to call help. Her adrenaline was rushing. Her heart rate was mostly elevated. She's lucky she didn't have a cardiac event. The poor lady was helpless. Fortunately, somebody that lived at 1012 came out of their house when they heard the commotion and went pounding on the door at 1014 Macokota Street to summon the owners to call off their dog. They finally got the owners to come to the house and called off the dogs. Is that an aggressive dog behavior?
I guess it could be viewed as an
Okay.
aggressive behavior.
I would. Should that dog perhaps have been removed from the community for that aggressive behavior? Vicious, aggressive behavior. Barking nonstop, the shrillness going through her ears, because if you ever hear a dog bark that's aggressive, there's a high-pitched sound that comes from it. Am I painting a clear enough picture? Okay. The dog was not taken anywhere. It was allowed to stay inside the residence. Now, as Paul Harvey would say, here's the rest of the story. Her event most likely happened on May 20th because the council meeting was on May 22nd and she referred to last Saturday night as to when the event happened. So we're setting it May 20th. She comes to the council on the 22nd, and guess what happens after that event? A fourth grader walking to school is attacked by the same dog. He's got a hoodie on, he's got a backpack, and the dog was jumping and barking viciously and jumping up and down on his backpack. Those were the descriptions from the chief of police when I talked to him last Monday. Now at that time, it was decided that they would charge the owner for harboring an aggressive or vicious dog. I don't know what the terminology is. I do not know who actually investigated one or both of the incidences. If you want to ask Mr. McNally, he might have some knowledge. I don't know. Are you going to ask him?
No.
Okay. May I?
Yes.
Travis, do you know who handled the two incidences on Macocata Street? He handled both of them. Do you know if after the second incident that dog was taken out of the community immediately? Okay. Okay, and I don't mean to put you on Front Street because you're not prepared to answer. I was really hoping the chief was going to be here tonight because he most likely had first hand.
But for the
Yes.
record, I will just say that Sergeant McNally answered he did not know to your questions, but
Sure.
the community would not hear that because Sergeant McNally doesn't have a microphone.
Okay. Might I suggest in the future that when the policeman sits over there that he has a microphone available for him? Because a lot of times I think the police officer has to address issues too, just as well as the council. But that's another story. Okay, Paul Harvey doesn't stop here. I don't know if Chief Simonson took the dog to the vet clinic for aggressive behavior. I do not know that answer. But I do know the dog has been relocated. The dog has been relocated to the community of Onslow. Here's where the story gets really good. Guess what residence in Onslow the dog is housed right now? At a daycare provider that handles up to 4 young children. Now at our last meeting I said something about kicking the can down the road. Well, there's where the can ended up on this kick. Does the city have any obligation or understanding that maybe the mayor of Onslow might want to be apprised that this is a vicious, aggressive dog that they inherited in their community? Do you have an answer, Bill?
Probably.
Probably.
If I was the mayor, I'd probably want to know.
Well, you're sitting in that position, so you are the mayor right now.
Of Onslow, I'd want to know.
Okay? Well, knowing that the city of Anamosa probably won't do a darn thing about notifying anybody, I took the liberty of telling a city council person from Onslow just to get the word passed on. I think if I was a parent and I had 4 kids in that residence, or had a child in that daycare provider's place, I'd want to know that there was an aggressive, vicious dog that is on the premises.
Can I ask you a question?
You can if I can answer it.
Okay, so at what point, I'm frustrated, and I have a neighbor that has an aggressive dog, but the dog is not there now. How do you know it's in Onslow? Like how?
How do I know this dog is in Onslow?
Well, I'm just saying that how does the city follow up? I mean, at some point, somebody's either gonna have to tell you where the dog went.
Is that not a reasonable question that the police staff could ask once a dog is going to be relocated?
Correct.
Is it not a reasonable question for the animal shelter to determine where that dog is going? So it
Correct.
doesn't end up back in Anamosa with some other less than responsible person adopting it?
But I guess my assumption is none of that has happened. You have obtained this information elsewhere.
I have obtained it from a city employee
Okay. Thank you.
who happens to live 1 or 2 houses away from this aggressive dog. I think the Anamosa Police Department has to be an advocate for the safety of its citizens and any visitors that are in this community, especially when it comes to dog bites. All I can see is a lot of inconsistencies in the enforcement of any ordinances that you might have on the books regarding vicious dogs, vicious dog with bites, etc. So before I get towards the end of my presentation, let's review the dog situations at hand. And these are the only ones that I know about. I don't know how many are unknown to the council members, the real mayor, Mr. Barnes, but it shouldn't be happening. July 9th, 2013. Who's got the photos? Okay. I don't think the police station, police officers did a very acceptable job. On March 28th, 2017, now we're getting up to current event status, just a few months ago, where the school employee was walking home after school, March 28th, 2017, boxer dog comes out, 1000 East First, grabs her by the arm, and pulls her to the ground. Was that dog removed from the community? No. But those of you that were here on the July 24th meeting, I don't think there's a single one of you that would not have agreed after reviewing the photos that had blood on it and the fact the dog pulled the lady to the ground. That was a vicious dog attack. The police did not remove that dog from the community after the March 28th incident. Jumping forward a little bit, July 10th, 2017. Again, 1000 East First, big boxer, comes out and bites me on my arm and on my breast. We've discussed that. Police department, half okay, half not okay. The half okay was when Travis came upon the scene and announced this dog is going to be taken to the vet clinic for a 10-day quarantine period, and the dog will not be allowed to come back inside the community again. Half bad, because if the March 28th incident had been handled properly, I most likely would not have been bitten on July 10th. Does anybody disagree with that? Okay. On May 20th, when Mrs. Reddy's was attacked by the dog, and I don't know of a better word to describe it than attacked, she was helpless. She was being held hostage by a vicious barking dog. She couldn't dare kick it because then it probably would have been even more aggressive and probably had bitten her. She couldn't run away because the dog probably would have chased her. She was helpless, and she didn't ask for that at all. She was out walking a dog, just a leisure walk, and look what tragedy that turned into for her. What a trauma situation. And then somewhere between May 20th and the end of the calendar year of the school year, a 4th grader gets attacked by the same dog that was attacking Mrs. Reddy's. So I see 4.5, Police department has failed us. That has really failed us. Now I know there's something on the agenda tonight to discuss tweaking the dog ordinance situation. So I thought it was important that I come here tonight and bring up this information that the tweaking of an ordinance is not going to do a hill of beans until the police department does something consistent, and that's to enforce the ordinance. No matter what the ordinance says, they need to consistently enforce it. Would anybody disagree with that? Now, I'm man enough to bring it to your attention. I also feel that there's some possible solutions to this situation. So I'll give you a list if you want to make some notes. Is there something you want to say, Betty?
I got my notepad.
Oh, I just thought you were smiling at Bill over there.
No,
You're listening?
in a three-man
David,
up.
please proceed.
David, I'm smiling at you because
okay.
every complaint you have had has come out of my mouth already.
Okay.
So,
Well,
yes, I'm there with you.
okay. I just want to make sure everybody's on board here. I think there needs to be pictures taken of the dog. So if it needs to be future referenced, you have some sort of reference, you know. Was there a bite in the situation? Sometimes there is, sometimes there not. It depends on how you tweak the ordinance, whether you get that no injuries clause out of there. If the dog was on leash, was the dog pulling away from the owner to get it, a potential victim? These are all things that the police department needs to document, so they've got, you know, if they're going to make an error, make it in the side of the favor of the citizens of the community. To heck with the dog or the dog owner. Okay, you got a vicious dog, you got an aggressive dog, that needs to be handled appropriately. Was the dog off premises and not on leash? You look at the overall circumstances. Was the victim pulled to the ground, like that teacher was on March 28th? Or was the victim knocked to the ground by a larger type animal? Does the department have any history of that dog's activities previous to an incident? Is the dog current on the rabies shots? I will tell you this. The victim on March 28th, the school teacher who now lives in Rhinebeck, Iowa, still is waiting for a call from the police department to say that the dog was or was not current on rabies shot. Now, it's a moot issue now, but there was no follow-up. Make sure you get documentation from the victim. If nothing else, get documentation from the victim. If the law officer can't make a determination, be sure and consult other law officers. Call in a Jones County deputy for an impartial second party. Travis, I understood from the July 24th meeting that if you had had a do-over on the March 28th incident, you might have given the other officer perhaps some different advice. Okay? Consult with a non-law enforcement official for another opinion. I've got my phone on 24/7. Call me. I'll review the documents, the pictures, and any evidence that you might have, and I'll offer an opinion. Again, the ordinances are only good as the Anamosa Police Department enforces them. They need to be consistent. Likewise, I think the city has to give the police department the tools to work with. For example, the dog on Macokota Street. It should have been taken away on May 20th. If there had been some type of kennel down in one of the city shop buildings to get that dog into a neutral area where it most likely was not going to be involved in another aggressive dog behavior, then move them there temporarily until something else can be taken care of. I know the chief doesn't want to put a dog in the squad car, but like I've said, not all aggressive dogs have to be placed in a squad car. You've got a fleet of vehicles here in the city. You can even have the dog owner drive the dog down to the shop if that's where the kennel might be located, under escort of the police officer. Police officer may not even have to touch that dog. Put him in the kennel, lock it up, and say goodbye to the owner, and then you do your paperwork as far as citations or whatever. You know, it doesn't have to all be handled by the police officers. You can use that owner. Or transport it out to the vet clinic. Have the owner travel out there, the officer can follow. I know I didn't look on the agenda. Is the animal shelter people here tonight?
Yes.
Okay. I know that there was discussion last time that they would be willing to come over and pick up the dog. But it's my opinion that dog has to be in a neutral position. It can't be remaining at the owner's residence. Also, if you're going to revise an ordinance, you might want to check with your city or your city attorney rather, and see if there's any potential liability that the city assumes by allowing an aggressive dog to stay within the community. I would be interested to see what the city attorney says about that. Is anybody willing to get back on me if that ever happens?
On what?
Checking with the city attorney to see if the city assumes any liability for not removing an aggressive dog.
We already know that the city assumes the liability for many things that we have no control over. And you are talking about a situation that we may have some control over, may or may not. And the city attorney is the one that writes or revises the ordinances for us so that they are legal and well-grounded. And has done so for us for our ordinance that's on the agenda tonight.
Okay. I was truly hoping Dale would be here tonight, but since you're sitting in the hot seat, Bill, is the chief of police charged with the performance or reviewing the performance of his subordinates?
He is.
Okay. How do you think he's doing when it comes to dog bite situations, aggressive dog situations?
As we already discussed on the July 24th meeting, there was some gray area in the officer's mind about whether the bite from March was a bite or a pull, okay? So we looked at that ordinance based on our discussion we had the last meeting. We know that we talked to Sergeant McNally and got his viewpoint on it. And so I don't know what kind of conversation the chief has had with Officer Mackey or Sergeant McNally.
Or how about Officer Rickles?
Or Officer Rickles.
Because he was the one involved, the primary investigator on the March 28th incident.
Okay.
How about everybody? Everybody does exactly the same every time.
Well, wouldn't that be utopia?
I'm just saying, if that's the procedure, then that's the procedure, every single time.
But I don't think it's been happening, Betty.
It needs to happen.
Will it happen? You can't answer that, and I understand why you can't answer that. Which leads me to the next question. Had the mayor been here tonight, I was going to ask him how he thinks the chief's performance has been regarding dog bites, vicious attacks. And I don't expect you to answer, Bill, on behalf of Mr. Barnes. But I think it's time for the mayor to step up to the plate and do his job. If he's been neglectful in doing his job, maybe it's time for the mayor to step down. If the mayor wants to step up to the plate, maybe he needs to take appropriate corrective action with the chief of police. I understand the chief of police comes under the direct supervision, per se, of the mayor. And don't tell me the city administrator has a problem, or a direct line. It's mayor, chief of police. I believe that's the only position in the city that's unique that way. And if the mayor doesn't step up to the plate, I think it falls upon the members of the city council. Somebody's got to take some corrective action. I'm not calling for the chief of police's termination. But if he was to offer his resignation, be a fool not to take it. And if the mayor doesn't want to do the job, then it falls on your shoulders as city council members. So somebody's got to make a tough decision. This is just pertaining to dog bites alone. What else is out there that is of concern that I don't know about?
Okay, but this is not a public review of our chief.
No, I understand
Your
that's
presentation was about the dog bite.
dog bites, which leads into
Yes, I
the
understand.
handling of the dog bites.
I understand that.
They're all intertwined.
And one of the things that you have failed to bring to the public's attention is that in every one of those cases, there is an owner that has been negligent in containing their dog, training their dog, socializing their dog, and being a good owner.
But we're dealing with
I understand
the
that.
after effect.
I understand that. And we are working as a group, as a council, to tighten up that ordinance.
Again, the ordinance is always good
I
as the
underst-
enforcement.
We understand that. Every bit of this city government works in sync, and we're certainly not always in sync, as you
Okay.
well know.
Oh,
Just
sure.
like working for the state, you've got different people with different objectives, and they're not all leading to the same place. So you'll have to bear with us and give us a chance to correct some of those things going forward, because we certainly can't go back and fix what we've already messed up.
I understand. You
Okay.
gotta move forward. If you've got some fencing materials that you don't have any city employees that are capable of building a kennel, contact Warden Spersloggy. I'm sure he's got all kinds of inmates inside that facility in the maintenance shop that would be more than happy to put together a kennel.
And we use those.
Yeah. How many are you using now for outside work?
You know, on occasion, we probably use, and you use what, 2 or 3?
I used 3 for a little while, and then 2.
So we probably use 5 or 6, depending on what our needs are
Okay.
in those 2 departments.
If other departments are in need of a couple,
If they are trained and
who's trained? The inmates or the staff for supervision?
staff for supervision,
Okay.
and they have to go check them out, use the inmates, care for the inmates as appropriate, and take them back and check them back in when they get done with their mission.
Now, this is purely speculation on my part, but I'm going to guess that some of these inmates that have been utilized in the community for the past few months were inherited from Luster Heights camp and brought back when Luster Heights was closed. Now, these are not your normal minimum out people that work at the powerhouse, et cetera, at the penitentiary. These are minimum live-outs. They're a whole different breed of cat.
Okay, can we,
I'm just throwing out
No,
suggestions
I-
to build the kennels.
I understand, but we have an agenda to get through.
I have a right to my time. I didn't know I had a time limit. Is there a time limit?
There
Right,
was
5 minutes.
initially a 5-minute time limit.
I was never told that.
I let you go because you had a lot of material to present, but
Well,
now
thank
we
you.
are off the subject.
Okay. Well, not really.
Okay.
Use the inmates to build your kennels if you can't get them built.
Okay,
Okay, I will relinquish my time to the next
Thank you,
presentation.
David.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. And you do have valid points.
Dusty Embry, Director, Jones County Economic Development, update on trail project, and she too will have more than 5 minutes.
I will try to be quick for you. And I brought along Brad Hatcher, Dusty Embry, Jones County Economic Development. I live at 602 North Lynn Street. And Brad Hatcher, Stone City resident. So you had a kind of a memo in your packet regarding the trail project. Some of you weren't here when we've initially talked about the trail project. I'm not sure if all of you know all of these points that I put in this memo, so I just thought maybe we could kind of run through it. So the Wapsie Trail project, as it is today, is going to connect the city of Anamosa's 2nd Street to the east side of the Wapsie State Park. That's going to happen in 2 phases. Originally it was 1 phase. We've now separated it into 2, and you have an alignment map that was included in your packet. You should have seen that prior. The city has previously committed $30,000 for the engineering for that project, and that is ongoing right now as for the engineering. So Anderson Bogert is our engineer that we've hired, and you had 15,000 in FY17 and FY18 15,000. We're doing our best to make sure that the project makes the most sense for everyone involved and that it moves forward, and it's really going to be a great asset for the community of Anamosa. We've raised approximately $790,000 of the $976,000 for phase one. Sources, we've got all kinds of sources of money. Our engineer said we have more sources of money than most places that he's worked with. He's worked with a lot of trail projects, and he says, "Wow, you're really stacking up the different grants and different things." So it's hard to keep track of everything, but we have TAP funding, we have REAP funding, we have several Wellmark grants, we have the Parks to People money, which is originally kind of what started this whole project and moved it forward. We have a lot of private contributions. We've got money from Jones County and Jones County and Anamosa Foundation grant. So we've got a lot of support, a lot of people involved, and a lot of different funding sources right now. And we have a couple of grants outstanding. One is the State Rec Trails grant that we should find out in October about. This REAP grant that's on your agenda tonight, hopefully we will turn that in. It's due tomorrow. And we did receive a REAP grant last year as well. So we've got a couple things outstanding and a couple more in the hopper that we're hoping the best for. So one of the new developments, the new thing that kind of happened is the trail's largely going to be within the right-of-way along Shaw Road. So we're going 2nd Street, and we're going to run in front of the daycare there in the right-of-way, and then it's going to curve around on Shaw Road and stay within the right-of-way. The only place we're leaving the right-of-way is on the McKean property, and they've generously donated, you probably saw that in the paper, generously donated their land for that project. So we're very excited about that. But due to the trail being in the right-of-way, curb and gutter is necessary along there. So when our Jones County engineer found out that we needed this curb and gutter, he says, well, you're going to put curb and gutter on road that quite frankly, probably needs to be replaced. So all these different things, all these different people working on this, he says, oh, we could probably move the road project, that piece of the road project up to coincide with the trail. So all the wheels are spinning together, everything's moving together, everybody's seeing where we can help, so we don't, take out nice curb and gutter in 4 years that it's brand new, and when they do replace the road. So because of that, they proposed that they resurface that section of Shaw Road from 3rd Street to just past the Pascal property there. So that would, like I said, eliminate the need to tear out that curb and gutter when they do replace the rest of the road. So that's good news for the trail project. It's good news for people that drive that road frequently, and hopefully will give us some economies of scale when we go to bid the project. So how do they affect us here? Well, Jones County, or Shaw Road is a secondary road, and it's generally maintained by the county, but 2 of the properties along that road are within the city limits of Anamosa. So there's an Iowa code, if the property is within the city limits, then there's so much of the road that the city's responsible for. So up to the center line. So there was a map in your packet that showed those 2 little sections there. And I noticed your packet was in black and white, but these 2 little orange sections are the sections I'm talking about. So the county engineers estimates that includes dirt work, sub-base pavement removal, and 11 feet of new PCC pavement, approximately $60,000 to $65,000 for replacement for those 2 pieces. And we know this totally blindsides the city. It blindsided us when you talked about replacing it. It wasn't something we were anticipating having happen, but it became something that was thrown in our lap. I mean, we'd like this to be a real simple little trail project. We, boom, 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 be done with it. It hasn't totally happened like that. I think it's going to be well worth the effort when we're done, but this is we know this is kind of an unexpected thing to have pop up on your lap. So we did visit with the county supervisors to talk about how we could make this less painful. We know this is not in the city budget. Obviously, this isn't going to happen within this fiscal year, even if it's probably going to happen after July 1 of 18. So that would, no cost would be incurred before then anyways. However, the county is willing to do a 2080 with the city, do a multiple year agreement if that's necessary, and they could cover the cost up front, be paid back over a couple of years. So we did check with that just to kind of see if something had to be done like that, how could that work? Why now? Why are we trying to move this up? Well, the Parks to People money, as you remember, there's some grant stipulations. We've gotten an extra year extension on that project, but that is $150,000. So in order to meet the deadline of next December at 18 for phase 1, we have to be under contract by June 30. So right now is when we're turning in all the, I don't know, the plans and things to the DOT. I don't even know all of that stuff. That's why we hired the engineer, but we have deadlines we have to meet. So the preliminary designs have been turned in. They actually were turned into the DOT today. There's more, the final designs have to be in by November 21st. So we have some deadlines that we need to meet in order to get that money from Parks to People. So what do we need? We just need some kind of an agreement that you all are on board with this and that you're willing to work with the county on that 2080 and figure out what makes sense as far as a payment plan for the city's portion of that road project. And so if we had that agreement, then I'm sure the city attorney would work with the county attorney and the supervisors, and I don't know how all that works, but Tammy sure does, and there'd be a 2080 agreement that would be created and then would be approved. Am I right? Okay.
So tonight you're just looking for our commitment to working with that.
Yes.
With the Board of Supervisors.
Right. So, so that's that piece of it. Then the other piece that's on your agenda tonight is a REAP grant that the city of Anamosa would submit for the portion of the trail that's within the city limits. We did receive it last year, so we received $100,000 already for the city's portion. City's portion is about $252, and when I say city's portion, I don't mean that you all are paying for it. I mean the portion of the trail that's within the city limits. It's still in our trail budget. So we did receive a $100,000 grant for that last year. We're going back and asking for, I think, 92. It's in your packet this year. So
Is that the one due tomorrow?
yes.
Okay.
So if approved tonight, then I would bring a thing over and have Tammy and Bill sign tomorrow before I email it in.
So we agreed to 30,000, 15 and 17, and 15,000 in year 18.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
And
you
now-
approved that for the engineering. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
was-
and we started off by, we were going to use it to build sidewalk along 3rd Street.
That was never what I asked for. I've always asked for
was a discussion.
engineering.
That was the discussion we had.
But
Yeah.
I don't know who you
And then you needed money for engineering. So you're using that money for engineering?
How it was approved was for
Yes.
engineering.
Yes.
When I came and asked, it was always for engineering because nobody wants to pay up front engineering costs. So the city and the county both came, and actually we did get a Walmart grant for some of those engineering money too. And our engineering is actually becoming more than we thought it was going to be. I mean, it's a pretty large expenditure. So yeah,
Oh,
the city
yes.
has committed 15 and in
And-
17 and 15.
And you're right, Cody, originally we were discussing the sidewalk thing, but I don't know that that was voted or agreed upon.
Bill, do you remember what the original estimate was on that sidewalk that we got?
I think it was around 25.
I think it was around 25,000, and now they're asking for another 60,000.
Well, that doesn't have anything to do, this 60,000 doesn't have anything to do what we'd have previously agreed to as far as whether it was sidewalk or engineering. This was something we just found out about, Board of Supervisors just found out about last Tuesday.
This is for the road.
Yeah,
Right, that they want to replace the road. This has nothing to do with, I mean, the reason it has to do with the trail is because we want to do the trail
And the road.
now. We want to do the trail now. The road is going to happen either, now, or it might happen in 3 or 4 years, and you're still going to have to pay for it.
so
But because of the trail, they're moving
We're
it up to
moving it,
do
they're
quicker.
moving it forward to work with us.
Derek
That's what
is
they're
moving that portion of, up on the 5-year plan to current instead of waiting out. Since we're required to put the trail in, we're required to put curb and gutter in. So what Dusty said earlier was 4 years from now, when they do the rest of Shaw Road, they don't want to tear up our brand new curb and gutter to do the white cap on Shaw Road or whatever they do to it.
So another 65,000.
Potentially. I think he kind of guessed high,
I think
but he
it'll
wanted
probably
to
end
make
up being
sure.
like your engineering.
Correct.
I don't know that that's correct, but our trail within the city limits is estimated at a little over 200,000. So the whole phase one project is a little under $1 million. So even with this extra for the road, I think it's a pretty good bang for our buck. I know that I'm with you, Cody. I hate that we're here. I told you we wouldn't be back here for the trail. Technically, it's not the trail, it's the road, but I understand it's this project. I get
Right.
it.
And
I
I just,
hope this project becomes, seriously, it's been like this big, right? But I think it's going to be the only reason I'm sticking with it is because I think it's such a positive attribute for our community. That is the only reason we are pushing it forward.
And if you go back and look at the building of the LCC and the struggles and just getting that done and how painstakingly it was for the community, and look how wonderful it is. And the same with our library. They changed the name of the library to get more funding. Anything that is growth and comes to our community on this scale is not going to be easy.
So,
And it's not
just,
going to be cheap.
and it's just not the city that's paying for curb and gutter,
No.
because the curb and gutter has to go all the way from,
We are paying for the curb and gutter. The
Yeah, but-
trail committee,
but the
that's
curb
part
and
of
gutter
it.
runs the
But then-
entire length of that
Exactly.
section.
The road piece is the piece that you,
Have
yes.
city limits.
Yeah,
right,
we're just
the-
paying our portion of it.
Of the road.
If the
Mhm.
65,000.
Then the county has a piece of the road project
Right.
as well. Mhm.
And that probably wasn't in Derek's planning either, to
No.
put curb and gutter in there.
No, but he understands how we have to think a little bit forward and not, so we wouldn't have to go back and say, well, why didn't you guys talk to each other and why are we tearing out this curb and gutter? So, I mean, I understand the hesitation. I totally get it. I understand.
well, when we started this, it was a trail from 3rd Street
To the park.
to the park.
And it's
now
still- it's still
now we're
busy.
1,300 feet of 3,000.
We're about we're halfway. We will be halfway.
Does that
Of the-
include the bridge in that 1,300 feet?
I don't know what 1,300.
Bridges and
1,300
city
feet is just the area of the city.
Doesn't concern us.
That's by the fire station and
Right.
Main Street
That's
to
just
Castle,
that.
so
That's
there's no
just
bridge
those two
there.
pieces.
So
I didn't put the county pieces.
they still
in
need
there.
to put 2 more bridges in, and
Not the
That-
city, not us.
not no, not the city,
Just to
but the
complete
trail
that.
as a whole.
We'll have one trail within phase one, and then there'll be, or I'm sorry, one bridge within phase one, and then one bridge within phase two.
So when do you start or plan on starting phase 2?
As soon as I'm done with phase one. As soon as I'm done with phase one, we'll get working on phase two. We're not giving up the project. It's not gonna not happen. We were talking with DNR yesterday. I mean, you understand that DNR's having, cuts and things, but we talked to, the head guy at the Parks Department, and he's talking about getting the engineering into the, next year's plan to get that engineered on the DNR land. So we're moving forward. We've committed funds to phase two. We're doing the preliminary engineering plans for phase two. So it's not gonna be a trail to nowhere. It's gonna happen. It's just that we've got pretty strict time constraints for phase one that, that has to get done. And so we also think that once that piece is done, I mean, you see the use of the sidewalk that goes out to the middle school, and I mean, it's, this wide, and people are using it and stepping and, watching other people. It's just gonna be another place for people to walk and recreate. I think it's a good thing.
Any questions for Dusty? Thanks, Dusty.
Thank you.
Brad? Mrs. Loris Lyons regarding drainage issues for landowners on Chamber Drive and Dillon Court.
I thank you for giving me this time to come forth. I'm a resident that lives on the Chamber Drive and the Dillon Court subdivision in Anamosa, and we have a water issue out there.
Could I have your address, please?
Pardon?
Your address, please.
423 Chamber Drive.
Go ahead.
We have a water issue out there in the backyard of our homes. We have a hill, and the water drains down and comes down in our backyards. Pretty bad. But there's been some development going on that street that is abutting us, which is known as the Consul Street. And already a couple homes have been built, and it's caused an even bigger problem. So I have a letter to the Anamosa City Council to read regarding how the residents feel. Due to the excess water runoff that now exists to the homeowners on Chamber Drive and Dillon Court, we, the residents of Chamber Drive and Dillon Court, are asking the City of Anamosa to request that any future development on Council Street abutting Chamber Drive and Dillon Court property be required to give a responsible drainage plan to the City of Anamosa describing their contract building responsibility for runoff water and onto the property of Chamber Drive and Dillon Court. We respectfully ask the City Council to visit the site and to consider the liability to the developer before issuing a permit to build. Respectfully submitted. And 100% of the people that I'm talking about have signed this. And if I can come forth, I'll
Please.
give this to you.
Have you talked to the developer, Bryce Rickliffs?
No, I haven't talked to anybody.
Okay.
Can,
I have a
Have you-
question, and I'm wondering,
I have a question. for you.
Yes.
Have you taken this to, because we don't approve building. We don't, when somebody wants to build something, the city council, we have a planning and zoning committee, right, that approves all building,
No.
and Al, but the city council does not have any part in that.
The only
And you-
thing, just for clarification, planning and zoning reviews subdivisions as a whole.
And when
And there's
each-
requirements in the ordinance that that person doing that subdivision has to meet.
And when each individual house gets put for a building permit, the city council does not approve them.
Yeah, there, we don't have an ordinance that addresses drainage issues from property to property. The
That's
only
what
thing
I
the
wanna
city
clarify.
takes care of is the drainage in the street, technically.
Okay.
is there anything on the books that give the responsibility to people building to the fact that for the water drainage to drain into the sewer system and not onto the property owners that you know of?
So if Anamosa implemented a building code, would that be part of it?
I can't answer that, I would assume.
I'm
you
just
could.
throwing it out there. That'd be a question for our city attorney too.
Yes, I would like to have it addressed and see.
I'm sure this will start some future
Mhm.
discussion.
And-
That's kind of where I'm going with this.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did go out and visited with Mrs. Lyons yesterday evening and walked through her backyard, as well as adjoining property owners. And it becomes very apparent when you stand there and look up of what she's referencing. And you can see, I don't wanna call them channels, but depressions through the yards where the water has ran from the top of the hill to the bottom. I don't remember, Mrs. Lyons, the neighbor immediate to you that had the undermining of the Four
Oh, I
Seasons
can't think of his
room.
name right off,
But
yeah. We're
there
new
is
in-
one property next to theirs that you can tell that water has caused.
Some damage.
Yes, and you know, as she pointed out to me, the sidewalks alone, you know, are very apparent that the water and mud or whatever has made its way from the top of the hill to the bottom. And, you know, I don't know what needs to be done, what can be done, short term, long term, but I think she does bring valid points to the table today that, something needs to be looked at. They, you know, shame on you for living at the bottom of the hill. That's just not right.
Right.
Well, Rod,
If
The-
nothing is done, I'm afraid we're all gonna go rogue, and we're all gonna start putting in some type of a plan in order to try and keep our ground from flooding. And that's not the solution. Nobody
Question.
wants to do their neighbors
Question,
in
Rod.
order to solve your own problem.
up above, are those the new houses? Do they not have grass any place? Is it just mud running down? What-
They're
Just
So-
some
are
of them
exposed.
do, most of them at this point in time do not, because the projects aren't finished.
So did they not have to put up any silt fencing around to
A couple
hold?
of them don't even have gutters on them yet, they're not doing.
But
built.
for those that don't have any grass to kind of hold the water back, they have not put up any fencing
No, they won't
to
sell-
hold any of
they
that
won't sell
water
fence or
back.
anything down there in the back.
Do we require it?
Do we?
City, does the city require silt fencing?
We don't, no, that's
We have
a.
no-
Well, if there's a runoff like that, there should be a silt fencing put up.
That was the point I was trying to make. And
With
a
the
lot of
building
these-
code.
A lot
Well-
of these developments and a lot of these builders, and they start another house, and then it takes 2 years later, you don't have anything finished.
Well, I know, but,
And so
but-
then therefore you don't,
but if it's
have
not in the
grass
code,
or
we
anything.
need to get that in the
Correct.
code, that they need to protect any other runoff to any other property, because as long as there's nothing there to help slow that water runoff, it's gonna be a problem.
and my question was, if we don't have a building code, and we have somebody else that's approving developments, and we have somebody else that's approving building of houses,
But you know,
we kinda need to come together
well,
and do
but you
this.
know, I talked to a contractor who said he was building a house in town years ago, and there was a slight runoff, and he was told he had to put up a silt fence by the city. So at one time, the city required it. So if it's not in place right now, who removed it?
Mhm. Or is it
Rich.
another unenforced
Yes.
thing?
With stormwater, DNR is also involved with stormwater issues, and that's for counties and cities, so there are rules in place for
Yeah.
silt fences.
Keep in mind too, it depends on every city administrator, they have some discretion, you know, so, and we have had,
I gotta tell you, in
I'm
this
not saying
instance,
right or
that should
wrong.
not be a discretionary thing.
I'm not saying right or wrong, but I know that some administrators might say to somebody, we need to put some silt fence up. Whether he has the right, that person has a right to do that, I don't know.
We've
But
got
that's
tile
probably why
lines
it's happened before.
from the new houses coming down the hill. Just
I
a
mean, that's
tile line
probably
right
why
out in
it's
the
happened
open.
before.
And maybe that's something somebody from the city needs to meet with the builder and stand where you met, Rod, and
I
have
believe
them
that's what
remedy
Greg
it.
was referencing.
Yes.
I talked to Greg this morning, and he was able to free some time up today, and he went over and looked. So, you know, the ball's been put in motion since we spoke yesterday evening. One thing that I found, I don't wanna use the word alarming to bring drama to this, but Mrs. Lyons had mentioned her neighbors had never had water issues until the current development on those three homes, is that?
Right, right.
And now they're starting to see that, so it hasn't been ongoing, there's new variables to this. And, you know, I gotta believe us as adults, whether it's city council, the developer, the residents, can work to resolve this. That's all you're asking for is
Right,
to take a look
right.
at this.
But you said they had tile line running
Yeah, tile
towards
line
your place coming
right down
down?
the hills. On the new houses that they put in so far, they got the black tile line just out in the open down the hill.
To get
And
rid
it's
of the
running down
rainwater.
into the
I
backyard.
know, but you're running it towards somebody else, you should be a
Right.
little
Who
Well,
comes in and
consider it.
inspects it when it's done,
Well,
to make
and-
sure it's done right?
And there is
Nobody.
certain elements on tiling that when you go to run off onto another person's property, you have to set that tile back so far so that the water will disperse, and you can't accelerate it onto somebody else's property. So.
But who wants to get into lawsuits?
I know.
I mean, if we
That's,
can.
you
and
wanna be good neighbors to everybody,
Right,
and they
right.
need to step up.
And I'm sure there's other homes in Anamosa that are having, you know, when they're being built, that have the same problem. So, yeah, I appreciate your time and see what you can do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. 5.0 proclamations, none. Council action items, 6.0 community betterment. 6.1, discussion and possible action on REAP grant application for trail project.
Do you need 2 signatures, Dusty?
I think on the other one, it has the mayor and city administrator.
Okay, so those 2 people aren't available, so if you make a motion, you're going to make a motion to have 2 other people sign it, the pro tem and city clerk
City
or
clerk,
whoever,
yeah.
just so Cause I don't have the authority to do that
So-
unless you say.
Dusty, as I look at what you have submitted, the REAP grant is ready to go. Only thing pending is council approval. I make a motion to accept the REAP grant that Dusty has proposed. Get the necessary signatures and finalize this for submission by tomorrow.
And you'll have to say who the necessary signatures are, Mayor Pro Tem and City Clerk, if that's what your
And
wish is.
authorized.
Authorized to sign.
So the mayor pro tem and the city clerk will be the signatures that are required to finalize for submission.
I second.
Rod's made the motion and Betty seconded to authorize the Mayor Pro Tem and the City Clerk to sign the REAP grant and to approve it. Is there any other discussion? Yes?
Randy Day, Anamosa, 304 South Oak. I kind of read the grant online. Now, does this obligate us to come up with $60,000?
This has nothing to do with that 60,000.
Nothing with the 60,000. That's the next thing. Okay, thanks.
Any other discussion? All in favor of approving the grant application, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Motion passed. 6.2, discussion and possible action on fund request for city share of Shaw Road Improvement Project in conjunction with Trail Project. This would be the 60 to 65,000 that we would borrow from the Board of Supervisors for 2 to 3 years to pay for the curb and gutter that is required on that portion of the road where it's next to the street.
Tammy, is there any road use tax or something that can go towards something like this?
Yes, actually, I did, some research on our cash balance in road use tax. Our cash balance in road use tax has increased with the 10 cent, which was a year and a half ago. So we have, and we've been, we've always, we use some for salaries and some for projects and such, but you do have enough room, I figured it out, through the end of fiscal year 18 with the, if the projected revenues come in and those expenses go out, and we've used part of that balance for the current STP project for our share. So yes, there's, I can tell you the amount that I estimate, but yeah, there's
So the majority of this.
the
of this
65,000.
Could come from something other than the taxpayers.
It would come from road use, it could come from
Okay.
road use tax potentially,
Okay.
yes.
Nancy Schaefer, 803 North Division Court. I think there was an error there in what you stated, Bill. It is not for curb and gutter, it's for the road.
But
It's
a
for the
REAP
curb
grant.
and gutter.
She's right, it's for the road.
It's for the road.
It's for the road.
Yeah.
So they can do
You're
the
paying
road
for
while the
curb and
trail's
gutter
doing
with
curb.
the trail project. But it's not, it's for just the inside the city limits. The paving of the road that's within the city limits.
Okay, when we had our discussion, I understood you to say that was for the curb and gutter.
I'm sorry, no.
Okay,
We're putting the curb and gutter in. Okay. They're replacing the road.
we had a discussion last week about this. Okay, because
I'm sorry. if I
by
missed
law, even though we have city property and we only annex in to the road edge, state law says that we really get right to the middle of the road.
Right to the middle of the road.
Yes.
is the annex.
Okay.
That's the code.
So
My
since
mistake.
we, as a council, kind of leave it up to Greg to let us know what projects he has coming in the future. Does this take away from some project that
Well,
you had that needs money before?
the 3 to 4 years yet that we're still gonna be, working on our asphalt projects, trying to get caught up on them. And then switching over to some of the concrete work. With the extra money that we received off the 6 cent a gallon road use tax, and we've been putting that money aside as savings to use towards our STP project, our South Elm Street, which we still don't have a final on that yet.
We've
So-
already transferred that money from road use tax into the project fund, so that is not in my balance. And the projects that we've done every year since I've been here is local option sales tax. We've been using 35% and 65%. Road use tax, because we haven't had that extra funds, has just been paying for salaries primarily and some ancillary things, but primarily salaries and some projects as they
So
come
we
up.
were starting to get a,
You're getting
surplus.
something built up, yes.
Well, yeah, I mean,
We
that's-
were.
That was our whole
You-
pro-
yeah, oh, and you-
our whole
I can give you the
purpose, putting that
dollars.
money
You-
aside.
You have plenty
Yeah,
of
we'll
room.
need- we have plenty of room.
You'll have plenty of
is this
room.
gonna spend half of what we've saved up?
Oh, no.
Much less.
It wouldn't even be 10% of what we'll have.
The next largest project I got.
So we have $1 million set aside, more or less.
is North Ford Street.
I mean, you
We
don't have to
will.
keep it a secret, it's their money.
Right. Right now, we have $746,000 in road use tax as of the end of July. Our projections, which are a little underestimated if we go by last fiscal year, we're estimating another 612 in the next 11 months. Then with the expenditures going out for salaries and such, if it's correct, we'll have about $960,000 in road use tax at the end of fiscal year 18.
So we're talking 60.
Nancy, do you have something else you'd like to add?
I wondered, does it never happen that curb and gutter is put in and roads are replaced or upgraded after curb and gutter is put in?
I think that
Yeah.
does happen. yeah.
So to get the curb and gutter put in does not mean that the road has to be done. I mean,
Correct.
there are instances where
Because the road
roads
is
are,
split, we try to work, it's just like Old Cass or Holt Street up there, half that is county, half is ours, so we try to work in conjunction with the county, so we're
Mhm.
doing both halves of the road at the same time.
well, I understand that, that's great if both entities have the money for it. My other, thing is being mindful of budgets since we've lost revenue, from the Walmart fiasco with the water. So I think you're really gonna be looking at some budget issues to come up. Also, I
That's
was
a whole-
wondering,
That's a separate.
Yeah.
I
road use
underst- I
tax is the
understand.
Street department, the other part, it comes from the other two departments, it doesn't.
yeah, but I know sometimes things are put in budget, I'm just stating that. Also, I'm wondering about the second half that is going to come sometime if the property has been secured on the Winokur end of it. Or if that doesn't happen, what's the plan? I mean, there are trails that are trails to nowhere, and a good example is Martell East. A lot of money was spent and it's a trail to nowhere. So sometimes I think it's better off holding off until you have the whole picture and have the money for the whole project. So, thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
I'm confused where we're at on the agenda here. But, yeah, if I understand this right, we're gonna borrow money from the county in order to do this?
That was an option. We
That
didn't
was an
pay
option
for
that
it.
the county gave us, but with Tammy's numbers, we don't have to borrow the money.
Correct. That's why I asked about the road use tax.
Well, I'm not against the trail at all. I don't want that misunderstanding. But I agree with Nancy. We could very well end up with something that goes a block and a half, and that's it. And I think that'd be a big mistake. We've thrown a lot of money at it now, and to throw more at it without some type of guarantee, I don't think that's a good idea.
I certainly understand your point, Randy. I guess, and again, it's how you wanna look at it. The trail, a sidewalk, a road, it does go somewhere. So, it may not continue on for, 100 miles or 10 miles, but they all go somewhere. they go to an end or a beginning, so.
I would entertain a motion or more discussions or questions to approve the funding requests so we can do our share of the Shaw Road project.
Well, I'd like to ask a question of Dusty. How much more ground do you have to acquire for phase two?
I don't have to know the footage.
It's about 800 and then another 1,000, something like that. The second half of phase two, but most of phase two is going to be in the right of way also, so no ground really has to be acquired. The reason that we split it up initially was because the DNR wanted to engineer their part of the property. Well, as everybody knows, the DNR is having budgeting problems, that type of thing. But we just met with Scott Michelson, who is a supervisor in Eastern Iowa State Parks, and he said that the engineering was on their 3-year plan to do it. So that's why we split it up, in order to meet timelines, other stuff. So DNR is all for it, and we're able to stay in the right of way the rest of the way, so we don't have a problem with that.
So you don't have to acquire any property from Rennikers?
There might be a small section that we need to work
So you
on.
do have to acquire some property?
We're gonna work with Rennikers to see if we could get a small chunk of, in order to complete the project, we probably don't have to. Is it our preference? Would it be a better route if we did? Yes.
That's what we're looking at. It would be a better route, but it's not imperative.
Do I hear a motion to approve this?
I make a motion, we approve it, but we use road use tax and not money from the county.
Is there a
And
sec-
it would be in fiscal year 19,
Correct.
18, 19, according to Dustin.
That's what I meant.
Second?
I'll second it.
Motion by Betty, second by Rod, to approve the city's share of the Shaw Road Improvement Project using road use tax in 18-19. Any other questions or discussion?
The road's going to be repaved,
Yes.
yes. Whether it happens in the immediate future or the distant future is driven by the trail. So, we're gonna have to pay for this at some point, because it is part of the city's, it's within the city's, control of city limits, so it's gonna need to be done.
You're exactly right.
And it's not gonna get cheaper.
We think we might get discounted actually because of the two projects together.
Somebody else told me that too.
All in favor of approving the funding request for the city's share of Shaw Road, say yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Any opposed, no?
No.
Motion passed. 6.3, discussion of possible action on a resolution approving an amendment to the 28E agreement with Jones County Solid Waste Commission. And basically what this did was took Center Junction out of the 28E agreement since they've disbanded. It just cleans up the wording. Any discussion, comments? Entertain a motion to approve.
Motion
for-
to approve
For us.
Second.
amendment to 2080 agreement.
Rod made the motion. We have a second. We are one of, I believe, if I read that right, 10 entities that have to approve this. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor, say, oh, I'm sorry, roll vote.
Betty,
Yes.
Rich,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Rod,
Yes.
Cody.
Yes.
I got to stop, don't do that. 6.4, discussion and possible action on a second request from a Coconut Valley Electric Cooperative for a waiver on fence height limit, allowing them to install a 7-foot tall fence with barbed wire on top on property located between Ford Street and Huber Street. I've been apprised by Tammy, who had a conference with our city attorney today, that we were not authorized to approve the waiver we passed when we authorized the REC to put a 7-foot fence with barbed wire around the Kula property, as we did the last time we discussed this.
Say
The
that again.
ordinance does not allow us to make exceptions to the ordinance. We were incorrect in approving the waiver the first time. The city attorney said it would not be prudent to go back and change that decision, even though we were wrong, but we are not, by law, allowed to approve a waiver to the ordinance that's currently on the books.
So
We
cannot.
we will not be discussing 6.4.
Does that have to go before Board of Adjustment?
No, it doesn't have to go in front of the board. Or Tammy, you want to?
Just, just for clarification, we had the reason this came up, a citizen came in and asked that question. Does the council have the right to waive, an ordinance, especially in the zoning section? Okay, it's a requirement, that's listed in our zoning section, so it's a law. Our ordinances are laws. The council does not have the authority to do that, number one. One option is change the ordinance. That would go to planning and zoning, because it's in the zoning section. They would have a public hearing, make a recommendation to the council. It would be put in ordinance form to amend the current law or ordinance, and it would go a public hearing with the council, and then 3 readings if they went through all 3 readings. So that's the ultimate way to address it. There is options on the zoning board of adjustment, which is an autonomous board. It can grant variances.
But we do not have that option.
But would this be considered a variance?
According to Adrian, in that section of the code, the zoning board of adjustment can authorize a variance from anything in that chapter. But it would have to be published, go through the zoning board of adjustment, and as I said, they're autonomous. If they made that decision to grant that variance, all the adjoining property owners would be notified to make contribution, and that's a zoning board of adjustment. They would, and that's an autonomous board, so the decision stops with them, the buck stops right there.
So, and that's how, because, I think that it was taken to them first before coming to city.
It was
council,
taken to
correct?
planning and zoning,
To a different board.
2 different boards.
Okay.
Which it should have never went to them in the first place.
That's what I
It
wanted.
should have gone to them if they,
Wanted
if you
to
were gonna talk
change,
about amending the ordinance, yes.
change the ordinance, they would make a recommendation to us, and then we would go through it. They should have
Public
never,
hearing, public
they should have
hearing
never
of
seen it.
ordinance.
It should have never gone to them this way. It should have gone to Board of Adjustment first and foremost.
Yep.
And primarily, because, Board of Adjustments, the majority of the variances that ZBA does is relating to our bulk regulations, which is primarily your setbacks. That's the biggest item of variance.
Is there a reason our city attorney is not here tonight? because I heard the whole room go,
When this was said. Well, this never came up until a citizen asked me that question. With the administrator being gone,
correct.
I felt the best place to answer that question would be the attorney.
That was, because the
Yes.
information we got before from
And
our
I just-
administrator was
Adrian-
not correct.
And Adrian was not available until like 3 or 4 this afternoon, so
Mhm.
that was,
Okay.
I could have asked him to be here, whether we'd been able to or not, I don't know. I just
Wow.
thought.
I think that's all the information we needed out of him right now, is just the correct avenue we should have gone as a city.
Patty?
Yeah, my name is Patty Manuel, and I work at Macocata Valley Electric Cooperative, and Jim was not able to be here tonight, so I said I would sit in if there were questions. And my understanding is that what we had brought to you tonight was not whether or not we could build a fence, it was whether or not how high the fence could be. And it's our understanding that the ordinance allows us to do a 6-foot fence on the property we own. So that will probably be what our directors will authorize. Well, they already have authorized the 6-foot fence. We were hoping to have 7 foot. So we probably will proceed with a 6-foot fence in light of this new work, because I don't know that we have time to wait for future public hearings or whatever's required. So I just wanted to share that. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks, Patty.
Thanks, Patty.
Patty, could you answer some questions?
I'll try.
I-
I don't
I guess-
know. I just knew that. That was
This has been a confusing project for me from the onset. I'm even more confused now. In regard to the letter submitted by Jim to the city administrator, the fence, you're gonna fence the complete property
Yes, that's my understanding.
for use of a storage yard.
Yes.
What's confusing, because in a previous council meeting, Jim had stated that intent of the property will be create another part to replace the part that they had removed.
Upon when the city gave it to them.
Also, that they're gonna build a part to replace what they had destroyed on their property. And they do not intend to close for access. The current plan is to use as a green space and pave an alleyway.
And I do believe that that was an original intent, and when the directors saw that we had to put our building in a different spot and just how our current storage yard
That
is.
would be post that building.
Right, so well,
The
and
building,
like I said, I
this
wasn't,
is minutes from November 14th council meeting, so the project, the building was already being constructed
okay.
at its current.
And that may have well been, I'm not familiar with that. I just know that at our recent board meeting, the board did direct us to just build our pole yard there. That's where we need the storage, and so that's what our current board has directed.
Still confused.
So you're not building a park, like you said you were gonna build?
Not at this point, no.
Could,
Nurit, did you want to speak? Patty, do you have anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
thanks, Patty.
Thanks.
I'm Narit Finn, and I live at 305 East 4th Street, and I have this whole prepared thing that I'm not going to do because things have changed. But as many of you know, I am a building owner at 126 East Main Street, and I also own and I'm president of Wapsie Valley Archaeology, a business at that location. And I am very concerned about that lot that sits directly behind our building and what's going to happen with it. We were told, I guess it was about a year ago when the REC first acquired the land. I know the city also gave some property, that they would be putting a green space in there. And that seemed like, okay, you know, it seemed like a nice thing to have. But we were really concerned about the parking situation. I don't know if all of you know, but my business, we have 9 full-time employees. and we have 3 vehicles, and we don't have enough parking for everybody. Right now, we've been parking in the public right-of-way between the 2 telephone poles behind there. But, I mean, that really is a big issue for us. So aside from the loss of parking, though, I'm also concerned about what's going to go back there. And I wanted to kind of bring to everybody's attention and remind all of you that our downtown commercial district is on the National Register, and that putting up a fence with barbed wire or even a chain link fence and storing a lot of equipment could compromise the integrity of the historic district. And so this is something to think about and to be concerned about. The whole point of having a historic district is to help the town and business owners like me to help bring visitors in and you know, to help property owners so that we can maintain our properties, get grant money to help the district out. And so that really is a major concern to me. So that's what I want to say tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Noreen.
Thanks,
Cecilia?
Cecilia Hatcher, and I live at 125 South Ford Street here in Anamosa, and I just kind of found out about this lately, and I don't quite understand 2 things. First of all, was it in an agreement with the city that that would be a park? Is that a written agreement? Is that a
No,
verbal
that
agreement?
was, and I
A
think,
verbal and in a memo, but there was never a signed contingent upon you doing this, you will obtain this property.
and,
Legally, no.
and
But
as
in a
Patty
memo,
said, they have changed direction.
But a verbal agreement is your word.
I would call it a gentleman's agreement, most definitely.
Right. And I know the city lost out on an agreement with Monticello at one time when there was a verbal agreement in regards to the TV situation, the local access channel. And the city lost a lot of money because of a gentleman agreement that was broken. And if a gentleman's agreement was made to do this, I don't understand how it can be otherwise. And then point number 2, what kind of impression are we going to give people who drive through Anamosa or drive around Anamosa to see this fence with barbed wire on top? What are we caging in that fence? The Grantwood Art Gallery has bus tours. The bus tours either drop people off in front and go and park in the back, or the bus tours, mainly the school buses that come in with students from out of town, park in the back and the students come in the back door. What is that going to do to some of the tours that come to Anamosa? Tourism is a main business in Anamosa, as all the merchants can tell you too. It's the tourists that come that support our downtown. And I'm very concerned about the situation. I don't understand all the background about it. I'm not privy to all that, but I'm very concerned about the results if a fence is put up and a promise is not keeping.
Yes.
Alicia Barnett, 200 East First Street. I work in downtown Anamosa, and yes, the parking situation has become a lot tighter. I can also see a major safety issue because there's a lot of businesses there that do have semi-trucks and big trucks come in and do deliveries in the back. As was said, there are company vehicles that need to be loaded and unloaded. There is a lot of businesses around there who actually depend on the availability of parking, such as the bowling alley, the grounds and goodies, even Daily Winery, I'm sure, uses a little bit of overflow parking. Tyler and Downing, they've been kind of squeezed with what has happened. And I see where, especially when you have utility trucks that come through and do a lot of work, where that can become a major safety issue. Of course, back in April, we had that big fire, and
February.
Was that
Betty's
February?
she knows.
All I know
Not
was,
that I know.
all I know was I was walking over there and wondering, why didn't I hear the fire trucks that morning? The fact of the matter is, you know, parking is awful tight in there right now as it is. And you squeeze it even more, and these fire trucks are not gonna be able to get through, emergency trucks get through, utility trucks get through, and delivery trucks get through. And as was stated on the whole tourism thing, yes, we do depend a lot on tourism, and that means those restaurants need to have parking available for those people. Starlighters Theater, which I have been proud to be a part of, also needs the parking, particularly the closer in they can get, the better for the elderly to get around. And this is where I see, you know, putting the fence around, it's just gonna make it a huge issue. And if we take away any more park space, where do people go to, you know, rest after antiquing and going to theater and such? Anyways, that's my 2 cents worth. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy?
No, they're gonna double up on us.
Tammy Sealy.
Brett Sealy.
We are owners of 111, 113, 115, and 117 North 4th Street. We have owned and operated the Anamosa Bowling Center since 1998. And we are concerned with, we have tenants, we have 6 apartments above those buildings that we lease. Currently, our tenants park on the north side of our building, which we have owned property there, which is where RAC is proposing to put this fence up. So basically, if it was closed off, the parking that we have for our tenants would basically become obsolete because the access would be closed for them to be able to pull into the parking spaces.
Tammy, can I ask you, from your building to where REC owns, do you know approximately how many feet that is?
The property line runs off that northeast corner of our building almost. Dad says there's
Yeah,
barely room to
it
even
does.
walk through the corner to separate.
That outline
So if
of
that
blue
fence
on
would
that
run, I
is
probably couldn't
what
walk
the
through
REC
our
was.
property from the corner of our building to that fence. That's how close I think it'll be in there. It runs at a diagonal. I think that's because that's the railroad right away at the time. So I think it crosses in there real tight off that edge.
I think we're also concerned with, you know, parking. If our customers, we have a minimum of 6 days a week, we have 40 bowlers coming every night of the week. So they are not riding together, so we're going to have 40 vehicles. So if there is no access to use our own property for parking, then they would be pushed to like senior dining or out onto Ford Street, which is okay, but then that impacts all the other businesses that we've been talking about today. The winery, Anamosa Floral, you know, T&D, all of that. So I guess we're just concerned with having access to our own property.
And if you haven't been to the bowling alley for a while, we've been nice sand volleyball, and we've created, my wife's the flowers and bushes. It's awful attractive back there, and I sit there and think, now what's that gonna turn into with, of course, there's a big mound of dirt with a bunch of weeds growing on it. Currently, it's been there for quite a while, but fenced in and barbed wire. The lady before commented about the trucks, the delivery guys do come around the back side. Obviously, they won't do that, so we'll have to crowd up Ford Street. I don't know if that's allowed. I've been chased off there when I've double parked just to take in a load of something, and the city PD has said, don't do that, you know, and I'm like, well, there's, you know, just in and out, but I can't imagine when the trucks start sitting out there, dead in the road, but, you know, I guess we'll have to be
And we've
addressed
been
then.
employing people for, you know, nearly 20 years in business.
The bowling alley's been there since '52.
I mean,
it's all not all
we're
new.
dwindling our downtown, and I think as a community for our children, and PE they come to bowl. I think that it's important to keep some of our downtown businesses going. That's really all we have.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I hear the people talking about parking and entries to their stores and stuff, and loading and unloading, and I think they're placing the burden of that on Macokota Valley when it shouldn't be. Macokota Valley acquired the property from the city of Anamosa. It is theirs to do with what they want
Only a
within
very
the law.
small portion of it. Most of that
Excuse
lot
me.
came from Starlighters.
Okay, so they acquired the property. It's theirs to do what they want within the law, and I don't hear that they're doing anything outside of the law with it. So I guess I don't quite understand, why nobody's speaking up and saying, this is their property. I can remember when the Mexican restaurant was painted the color it is now, and some people in this room just outraged by it. Thought it was horrible that this was happening. Well, it was theirs to do with what they wanted, and they weren't breaking any laws by doing it. So, I think this kind of follows that too. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Nancy.
Well, Nancy, you were a little quick.
Oh, I can get
No,
back.
no. I was going to point out that, yes, that Macokota Valley did purchase the ground that is being in question for the parking area from the Starlighters. Whether it was assumed or presumed for years that was just a city parking area
Right.
would have been incorrect. That was Starlighter property. The parcel that the city had gifted to Macokota Valley was the railroad right-of-way, which, for those that are familiar with that area back there, would be what I would call the alleyway, but all it was the old railroad right-of-way. So, yeah, I understand where everyone's coming from, including Macokota Valley. Again, at some point, I would think, as adults, there could be some compromises.
I also think, looking back, that you're talking about green space, and I think it was probably worded as possibility of a green space.
I'm reading the minutes.
Well, I know, you're reading minutes, but minutes aren't always correct verbatim, so.
That's all I have to go off of right now.
Yeah.
Mary?
Hi, my name is Mary Oldham, and I own Grounds and Goodies at 112 East Main Street. And I agree with all of the other business owners that have properties that this fence will affect. But one of the things that concerns me is all of our deliveries that come. We have big semis. If we don't have access to the back, they'll have to park right on Main Street. They'll block traffic, and if there's emergency vehicles, and I can't tell you how many times a week there are emergency vehicles that are trying to get through on Main Street, what the effects and consequences of that will be if this fence goes up.
And it would be nice, I guess, from my perspective, to know how much of that area. I can't imagine that the board of directors would fence off the entire area, but it would be nice to know how much of that area
Exactly.
they do intend
That's-
to fence off.
I think Rod's point that be a compromise to talk with them to get some space there to help these people out, these businesses. That should be some way to work that out, I would hope.
You know, especially when,
Betty, hang on a second. Ms. Weimer, are you with us?
No, I will be though.
you know, I guess especially when, as this was early on in the development stage, even though the building had been constructed, is we were led to believe that this had already been resolved, that, you know, they had gone to the lumberyard and to other property owners, and we're going to allow that alleyway to still be passable. And according to the letter that was submitted, that's not what's in writing here, is the complete property will be fenced.
Thank you, Mary.
It's not the same today as what it was back in November.
Hi, my name is Jeff Banowitz. I own the lumberyard. Thank you for bringing that up. Great point. You know, I had 2 semis trucks waiting in line this morning, waiting to get unloaded. Where were they? They were parked in that alleyway. And much like all the other businesses, I hear garbage trucks. I hear the Budweiser trucks, the pop trucks, all this commerce that has to happen for all of these businesses. I hear it all, because I hear it right out the back window. Much like my own. We're not talking about pickup trucks or cars that need to get in. We're talking about 80,000-pound semis loaded with stuff, at least for myself, that aren't easy to turn around. And much to Brett's point and other people's point, unless you want these semis parked in the middle of these city streets, be ready for that, because if they have nowhere to go, they have to get unloaded. And if this is allowed, Jim told me personally, face to face, early this spring, that whole alleyway we are not touching. We are going to leave that wide open. Daryl Seacrest was standing at my side when he told me. It was in his office. Now, much to your point, we're going back on what's been said and completely changing the whole deal. Whether it be green space or what, it keeps changing. Where's it going to stop? What's going to happen? You will chase everyone out of downtown. And I do not want to leave.
We don't want you to leave.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jeff.
Todd Weimer. I am the owner of the building that Grounds and Goodies is housed in, and my wife and I, Betty, live above. The shop, as all of you know, it's 112 East Main is the business address. I'm not going to make anybody happy tonight, I'm sure, because I've got a little bit of an issue with things that everybody has said. I'm going to address the issue of the meeting notes from November of 2016. I don't believe in conspiracy theories, so if that's what you're reporting, Rod, that was said at that meeting, I don't have any reason to question it. In fact, I was sitting in here tonight that was discussed, and it was presented as that that particular spot would be a green space, and I defy anybody to come into my home, which, as was pointed out earlier, February 16th of this year, I was removed from my home, thankfully, for the services of our fire department, our sheriff's department, our police department, the Marion Fire Department, the Martell Fire Department, whoever else responded to that call. I will never be able to say thank you enough. But I can tell you with 100% certainty that if the Alliant truck that had to come in to shut off the power to my building had been there and a fire truck had to have gotten down the back alley, wouldn't have happened. And I don't care if you had a good driver, bad driver, any driver, that would not have happened. And today there are people that are still trying to renovate those buildings at the west end of North Main Street, on the north side of Main Street in that block, that are continuing every day to try to do something to improve that. So for anybody to question whether a good or bad driver could get in and out of there, that's BS, and everybody would know that. That being said, the intimation that was presented to this body, with the exception of a couple new council members, was that the spot behind my home, the spot behind Grounds and Goodies, the spot behind T&D, the spot behind the bowling alley, the spot in front of our lumberyard was going to be presented as a green space. Brett commented that if you looked out there right now, the weeds are as tall as this desk. There's been nothing done to clean up those weeds. So if, by no other measure, someone needs to go look at that as a nuisance property, because there's,
That has been turned in
thank you.
as a nuisance property.
And I would point out that if the issue of this fence going up is for purposes of protecting property or keeping people out of this property, there's a pipe that's as tall as I am that stands out the east end of that dirt pile. And that's all it is a dirt pile. It hasn't been touched since the other building was built. That being said, I hold this city council, again with the exception of a couple of new members, and I hold prior city council members accountable for what happened in this instance. That property that was given, whatever, traded for other property, the hazard of the job that I have is you better get it in writing. Because if it isn't in writing, as much as we want to go back to gentleman's agreement, we've seen how that works. So I apologize to any REC members or people in support of it. That is a great business to have in this town. But this should have been in writing. It should have been in writing that that property was going to be something, whatever it was, building lot. But if that project that they started at the end of the Holt Street or whatever street is at the other end of that alley, they knew when they were building that they were going to need additional storage, and to come to this council today and say we need the fence to keep property in with razor wire or whatever else you want, that was known a year ago when this was planned. And if it wasn't, then it should have been something considered at that time. I am afraid, because of what I do, sadly, that this ship has probably sailed on whether or not the property can have a fence built around it. That ship sailed. That's done. The issue of a gentleman's agreement still can be recovered, though. There can be gentlemanly discussions about what can happen back there to address all of the concerns in this room. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Todd.
Randy Day, 304 South Oak. I'm not going to voice my opinion on this, but what I am going to say, people that are opposed of it, I think you're talking to the wrong body here. I think you should be talking to REC board. If you want them to change something, that's who you should talk to.
Thanks, Randy.
I'd just like to add one more thing. I think that when the city council made that agreement originally with the REC, that it was done in good faith, and perhaps in good faith, the REC would consider giving some land back to the city so that we can have access and parking and, you know, which the businesses need back there. So maybe that's something that could be approached with the REC by the city. The other thing is that I'm questioning whether it is in the spirit of the zoning, that zone, which is commercial arterial, for the REC to have a storage yard there in the first place, a non-retail storage yard. And I'm wondering if that might be a question for the city attorney, to see if that actually fits in with the zoning for that area.
Cammy has said something you'll ask
Adrian?
the city attorney. Just shoot him a question about.
Explain your question to me again, because I'm not following exactly the spirit of the zoning. I don't understand.
Well,
what
it's
you
a
mean by that.
commercial arterial, and the zone, I mean, I looked through the zoning ordinance, and it does not say that that property, that type of property can be used for non-retail storage of equipment. So I guess that's the question. That's not a specified use, at least in my reading, but again, I'm not an attorney, so, you know,
So the
I
question
don't
to
know.
Adrian would be, is this property, the storage of the pole yard, I think that's what I heard
Right.
Patty say was gonna go there.
Like, it seemed to me the wording was in place for a retail operation, like the lumber yard, to store building materials that would be for sale, but not for non-retail storage of equipment and other items. So, I mean, that's just a question that I think could be addressed.
She'll ask.
Okay. Right. Thank you.
Thanks, Maria.
It's me again, Dave Fleiss, 502 Rosemary Lane. As you're well aware, I was on ambulance service for 32 years. I've been away from it for 9 years, but let me tell you a story about a semi parked on a street unloading its commodities. It was out at Family Food. It was parked crossways in the street. A very foggy morning, a young teenager gets into his truck and the windshield was frosted over, probably scraped off about this much visibility, goes right underneath the semi-trailer, sustains a very, very critical injury. In fact, he fractured his C1 vertebrae. Fortunate for him, it exploded instead of imploding onto the spinal cord. He survived it. Now, you talk about the business people concerned about loading and unloading, mostly unloading, semis on Main Street. I can see the same scenario, even though they're probably parallel, going north or south or east or west, depending on where the business is. I can see the same thing happening, very foggy morning, limited visibility out of some windshield, running into the back of a semi. Semi usually wins. Okay? Thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else have a comment? I believe Patty.
I got one quick one.
Patty has been taking notes over there, so I suspect that a lot of our concern will get back to the REC.
And I've just been kind of listening, and I can understand what everyone is saying on both sides. I'm here at Matt Barron's and Anamosa Development Corporation. As I tell my daughter, there's your side of the story, there's the other side of the story, and then the side of the story that's going to solve it. And I would implore everyone to reach out to maybe Jim, reach out to the REC. I think he's going to listen. I think there's more passion on downtown right here in this room right now than maybe there has been in a while. But I'm also going to look at the city council and say, you guys aren't going to fix this. Reach out to him. Reach out to the REC. Reach out to their board of directors. See if you can find a common ground. Because you know what his board of directors saw? The YouTube video of a couple meetings ago, which had a couple of these council members not looking very good and making those of us in Anamosa not very proud. That's what they saw. They need to see this. Or we can come together, find a solution. But it's not going to happen in city council.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I just want to say every business in Anamosa is equally important. I don't care if they have 100 employees or they have 2 employees. The right hand and the left hand need each other. We need service industry, we need retail industry, we need everybody. And for anyone to think that somebody's business is more important than their neighbor's, not here. And I would never fall into that, ever. Economic development is a big range, and everybody's equally important.
I think everybody's been here a long time, and I don't want to make you all take any longer. I just do want to reiterate Betty's comment. I appreciate the economic development. I am on the economic development board, and we have invested a little over $1 million in our property, which is all going to come back to your tax roll for that. We have already hired 10 new employees that are working out of Anamosa and utilizing all of you guys' services, and we expect to hire more. And it's a necessary evil. You know, I look at I grew up in Anamosa. I've been in Anamosa every day of my life for my whole 58 years. And, you know, a building's not going to be nice there. A fence is not going to be nice there. The Dust Bowl isn't nice there. The Dust Bowl it's been isn't nice there. And I would echo Matt, come over and talk to us, because at this point, nobody has. Thank you.
Patty, I just do want you to know that I recognize the value that the Coconut Valley REC brings to Anamosa. It is one of they employ a vast majority of people.
68 right now.
I would imagine most of them live in the immediate area for that matter.
Actually,
so-
a lot of them come in, so they're buying gas here and they don't even live here, but they're buying.
So, you know, I just don't want to think that the council, and I'll just speak for myself, is unappreciative. I do recognize the value that you bring to the city of Anamosa, and I agree. I just would hope that we can come to some common ground.
And I hope so too, thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Patty.
Moving on, we're gonna do 6.5, discussion and possible action on a request from Kerry Klatt to place concrete slab in a city right-of-way at 303 Gibbs Street for a basketball court. I will start the discussion the same way I did the last one. The city does not have the authority because there's a ordinance stating this. We did this while I was absent for a cement pad on Crane Street. That wasn't legal. The city attorney said that it wasn't worth going back and changing, but we are not legally able to grant the request from Ms. Klatt for a concrete slab in the city right-of-way. I would suggest that they probably need to look at another piece of real estate on their property off of the city right-of-way, and that would lead us to putting the right-of-way back in the condition that it was before the construction of the cement slab started.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So it's back to the, if the city can give the railroad right-of-way to REC, can the city sell this right-of-way to this family so they could own it then?
That would-
Or is it just, I mean, could they approve to do that?
City can sell the right of way if they choose to.
I mean,
That's not the purpose of the right of way.
right.
Well,
But I
it's
went
for
and looked at it,
utilities.
is why I'm saying that.
Where do the utilities run on that portion of the ground, do you know, Greg?
There,
We have no storm drains out there.
there's a water main under
There's a
the
water main?
south side of that
There's
street.
sewer to all those houses.
So
Right down
if we knew where that, we could sell up to the utilities points.
I mean, it might be an option.
Well, there's no reason for that street to be 66 feet wide. As short as it is, it could almost technically be closed. Because I drove down around there, there's no house that really lies on that short little street there. So it technically could be closed except for the utilities.
Is it,
So
is it a city right of way or is it city property?
City property.
it's a street. It's platted as a street. It's platted as a 66-foot wide street.
It's
Which-
an option.
Which most of our streets in town are 60, same plot.
From the back of the sidewalk to the back of the sidewalk. And we can't really discuss that under this item, because that's not subject of this item. We would have to do the research and bring it back
Yep.
in front of the council.
Would they have to bring it to the council, or could we come up with something to take to them?
We could come up with something, I believe, and take it to them, if that's something that we can do. And I believe that that's something we're gonna wait for the city administrator to come back for.
Okay.
Are there members of the Platt family or representatives in council chambers?
We're gonna move on to 6.6. Discussion and possible action on appointment of Lindsay Duncan to the Anamosa Park and Rec Board as recommended by the board.
So moved.
I hear a first.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor, say yes.
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 Any opposed, no. Thank you. Public safety, motion to approve the renewal of beer and liquor licenses. A, Dollar General Store 3685, renewal of Class B wine permit, Class C beer permit with Sunday sales privileges. And B, Casey's General Store 2908, That's out on 64, renewal of Class B native wine permit, Class C beer permit with Sunday sales privileges. I'd entertain a motion to approve
So
those two.
moved.
Second.
A first, and Cody, was that you, a second?
Second, yes.
Any discussion? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, no. Thank you. 7.2, discussion of possible action on a first reading of ordinance amending animal protection and control ordinance to delete first bite exception. Any discussion?
David, you have a chance to read this?
Tammy read it over the phone to me, but as far as physically reading it, no. I didn't know where the commas and the periods were.
Gabby, do you want to read it for the public so they know what we're doing?
As soon as I find it, I'm on the right page here. I already have, oh, no, I got it. It's ordinance amending the animal protection and control ordinance to delete the first bite exception as stated. Whereas section 55.01 subsection 7 of the city code defines a vicious dog or a vicious cat as one that has bitten a human being or has attacked a human being or a domesticated animal without cause or justification, but accepts the dog or cat's first bite or attack provided the human being or domesticated animal attack does not have its skin broken or does not suffer injury. And whereas this council is of the belief the dog or cat's first bite or attack should not be disregarded, even though the skin of the victim is not broken and the victim does not suffer injury. Be it ordained, therefore, that the last sentence of section 55.01, subsection 7 of the city code be deleted in its entirety, and in lieu thereof, the following added. To constitute a bite, it is not necessary that the skin of the victim, whether human or domesticated animal, be broken. Rather, as long as a dog or cat seizes its victim with its teeth, it shall be considered to have bitten its victim. And this is under the definition of vicious animal.
Dave?
And Adrian prepared this, so.
Just have a generic question. With what was just read to us, would that cover the Mrs. Reddy's situation where she was attacked on Macokota Street, not bitten?
But the dog opened its
viciously-
mouth?
But it was
Would-
barking.
Has attacked.
Oh.
Has attacked
Does
a
that-
human being.
Is that revised potential ordinance cover a situation like that?
This is only speaking to dog bites,
It's if the
Not-
dog,
not
the cat
attacks.
open their mouth.
So-
and Whether
If
that
you're
breaks the
barking,
skin.
you're opening your mouth.
Maybe.
Okay,
So I think we need to add something, and since Jeff Swisher's here and he's a deputy, does the county, theirs says provoked or unprovoked? Are you aware of this at all?
Yes. An unprovoked attack is different than a provoked attack, you understand?
Correct. So maybe that's something we,
Somebody's running into your yard trying to attack you, and your dog bites them. So sad.
Let me clarify.
Like the cross-country team runs through in this
Then
one.
it's unprovoked.
The part that doesn't go away is a vicious dog or vicious cat means one which has bitten a human being or has attacked a human being,
would cover Mrs. Reddy.
Okay.
or a domesticated animal without cause or justification. That part's staying. The part that's going away is the forgiveness for the first bite that didn't break the skin.
And it shouldn't have been the sentence, it should have been the last part of that sentence after the comma.
Because as I understand it, on the first Macokota Street attack with Mrs. Reddy's, the dog wasn't removed from the community, but on the fourth grader, then the chief went back and said, this is the second aggressiveness, second attack. So he actually did use the first incident in justifying the second one. Well, why wasn't it, if that dog had been removed on the first incident, then subsequently the fourth grader would not have been attacked. Likewise, with my situation, March 28th, if that dog had been removed, I most likely would not have been bit on July 10th.
Like a lot of things we do up at our office, it's situational discretion, and that's about the only thing I can say, anything related to what Mr. Kleiss had to say prior is, a lot of our job is situational discretion, from speeding tickets to unfortunate dog bites. If we wanna go to zero tolerance, that's fine, but the police department just needs to know how the city council and the public wants us to proceed. Like zero tolerance, or still allow situational discretion to where we allow the owner to train the dog, get a better handle on the dog, maybe let the dog mature a little bit, or are we just gonna go zero tolerance? Either way, I just need to know how to proceed to the police department so we can revise policy and procedure so this does not happen again.
Well, might I say to that, Travis, the situational situation didn't work in 2 instances in the past few months, because there was a follow-up incident in both cases.
I think taking some of the, making it more black and white and taking the gray area out of this ordinance may help that. And I don't, maybe we need to add the provoked or unprovoked bite.
That's
To it.
fine. Now, black and white is great because it takes all the discretion out, but we go from a Yorkie to a Great Dane, a bite's a bite. And we're taking a new puppy away that unprovoked could have bit somebody, a bite's a bite. That's fine, but I just wanna make sure that the police department is getting directed appropriately from the council, and that the city understands when we come to take a dog away, whether it be a Yorkie or Great Dane, that they fully understand that we have zero tolerance for it, and that this is how we are proceeding as a city government.
And I agree with you, Travis.
That's my only request from the police department aspect, is that
You're looking for direction from the council. Is that not right?
ultimately, yes.
Yes.
And we're trying to do that, Nancy.
I would hope maybe you would look at Monticello's ordinances on this, because they do address provoked and unprovoked, plus a number of other issues that I think